Now, I see, Audrey, your question in the Q&A. I just want to make sure we get to the AI and the metaverse, and then we'll definitely come back to it, I promise you. But Anne is the one who is really well versed in artificial intelligence. And in fact, that's how I met her on a panel we did a few years ago. So this actually is from the Insider. This is a few years old. It's probably going to be worse because of C19, but you all have heard me say this before if you've been in here any minute of time within the 10K project, that AI is slated to disrupt about 4.5 million jobs for Black people. And the people who are going to be hurt worse is honestly Black men. This was a McKinsey report that was done before C19 ever came out. And I'm just trying not to say the word because I know YouTube is a little funny with the saying it, but the Rona, um, it accelerated the process and the progress that people was making. And I think the Great Resignation is accelerating it even more. There are great aspects to AI, and then there are aspects that could potentially, you know, harm us as well as a community, as individuals, et cetera. So, Anne, I want to toss it over to you. What are some things that people should know with regards to artificial intelligence, and especially within the Black community? What are some of the things we should be taking a note of?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is, and this is something that every now and then people will publish an article about this, but it's not, I think, really talked about beyond just, hey, someone posted an article about it, is like certain types of jobs are much more likely to be like automated out of existence. And kind of looking at those and figuring out like, do I need to make a career pivot now or possibly in the future? And the other thing is also like, you know, how do we look for upskilling programs? It's not, you're starting to hear maybe that word a little bit more, especially even before the Great Resignation happened. You were having things where there were certain things about manufacturing plants where certain pieces were becoming a lot more automated, especially now that like Amazon is actually automating a lot. Like they actually purchased a robot startup so that they could actually have robots move a lot of the things around their warehouses. And that's really, you know, foster a lot of innovation in that space, but it also means that these warehouses, you know, can be doing a lot more with a lot less people. But it also means now, instead of doing the job that you were trained to do, which was more low tech, you know, places like Amazon, these other businesses want to actually upskill people to be able to work with these jobs or work with these robots. And that's kind of more of thinking of things of like the people who are working in the warehouses. But beyond just the warehouses, there are a lot of things that are going to be continue to be automated in the next like 5 to 10 years. Like one thing that they always say is, you know, very likely to be automated is actually accounting, because it's a lot of thing where, you know, it's very rule based. There's not necessarily always a need for like nuanced decision making. A lot of stuff is like very black and white. So it's something that's actually extremely easy to automate, but it's also something people go to school a lot, right? You pay for it to take the exam, all this other stuff. You know, to be a certified accountant. So these are all things like we need to be thinking about, like in terms of, you know, where am I in my career now? How do I upskill? And then what types of careers are we thinking about the next generation? And not saying you should say, hey, if this is what you really want to do, don't study it, but making just them aware early on, like you can go to school for this type of thing, but you might want to learn some other things because it's what you want to do is going to look so different 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Even this, we're talking about blockchain tonight. When I was in college, blockchain, pulled out my earphone, but blockchain didn't exist. And AI existed when I was in college, but that wasn't the thing you studied. It wasn't the thing that was like I went to an engineering school. That wasn't like the top thing we were talking about in the College of Engineering. And so these are all things where we need to think about what types of things, you know, we encourage people to go into, not saying to discourage them from certain things, but helping them figure that out. And also like upskilling, because especially, you know, ageism combined with racism, you know, these are the things where we need to be thinking about like, okay, so if I get automated out of the job at like 55, you know, who is going to want to hire someone that someone's going to deem, oh, this person's really close to retirement. There's going to be ageism assumptions about like this, oh, this person's not going to want to learn new things. It's better to upskill before you need to, before it's like, oh, wow, like I now need to learn all this stuff. And this stuff, I know it can be very intimidating, but even just like searching for like upskilling programs and learning like types of things, because the reality is that the automation is not going to completely replace humans. There's going to be humans that need to work with these machines, whether it's just a computer program or whether it's a robot. But the thing is that people do want people who already know how to work with those machines, that have gone through these training programs. And there's a lot of these that, you can do for free. There's some that you can pay for. But those are all things you want to be on the lookout, because this is the reality is like people are talking about, do we need universal basic income? Because we're going to face this massive loss of jobs. And you said like or we'll say the ongoing event, which is for the sake of YouTube, I don't want to like trigger any keywords, is, since a lot of these companies are now struggling to hire people, and they are trying to raise, wages, that sort of thing. On the other end, they're working as hard and as fast as they can to automate those things, because even with them trying to raise wages and all those other things, it's not meeting their needs in terms of the people they need to be in those positions. And the other thing we also have to think about are long-term health implications of, people who haven't recovered, right? Those people aren't going to be able to re-enter the workforce. And so there are a lot of factors that are actually now causing companies to say, I wasn't planning on, going at this speed, but now I need to figure it out because I'm losing money because I cannot staff my business the way I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Oh, go ahead, Swan. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm an HR professional, and Anne's absolutely right. Every chance a company gets, they're thinking about how to automate, and they're thinking about how to automate the higher paid positions first. I was actually just watching. So Craig, if anybody watches the Today Show, Craig is at Olympic Village. And this week he did a segment on everything that's being automated there at Olympic Village. And the bartender is a robot. The person taking the order is a human, but the robot's making the drink. So when you think about how that translates, right? That the most important part of the job, the hardest part of the job, the part of the job that needs the skill is automated. And so we're gonna see that more and more as time goes on. So Anne, you hit that exactly on the head.
I would interject just one part, and I think this is a part that we miss often, is that even though these skilled workers are here, the skill that they have is the business modeling. And that's a crucial part of all of this, because tech for tech doesn't mean anything unless it has some really benefit to do something. And the best people who know those jobs are the people who've worked them for 20, 30 years. They know the little shortcuts. They know this actually works better. They don't show you this in the manual, but we do it this way. Those are the jobs that really will help the programmers build those systems, because people don't know. You can come to a programmer and say, okay, and the very first question is like, what do you want me to build? They don't know. So that you can't just tell them, well, make something digitized. They won't have any idea. So it is those communicative jobs of understanding, this is how we do this business. These are the efficiency hacks that we would like to put in here. Because if we could do it this way, this will save time, or this will actually help us do something. So those are the jobs that I think if people would recognize what they do at their job rather than doing the job, that can translate into a very big difference. And I think we have to think of ourselves. I always say the Web3 environment makes us think of ourselves as businesses. I always say Web 2 taught us how to be consumers. Web 3 is teaching us how to be businesses. You have digital assets. You have assets that now a business needs. You are the business. You need to interact with businesses in that manner. So when you think about all of the things that you're bringing to it, you may not be technical, but you have an understanding of how the business works, and business models are always going to be in fashion and in necessary, because at this point we are creating new things. And some people are just completely like, I don't know what happens down in HR. I don't know what goes on down there. And you can't automate if you don't know what goes on. So there has to be an interim at this point as we transition. All of those transitionary times are prime aspects for older individuals or people who've been in jobs for a long time. Instead of performing, they're actually being delegated the responsibility of crafting those business models.
Yeah, and I think
Amen.
it's important for mature people, I will say, to think about skilling up into board positions, skilling up into super high level consulting positions. I'm so glad Anne is on the conspiracy theory with me about UBI, because I said it before here, and I know a couple of people chuckled at me about UBI, but I honestly think it's being tested now because they know that more than half of the workforce is not going to either be able to skill up or be willing to skill up. And you're not going to, well, I'm not going to say you're not going to. In my opinion, it is going to be hard for your family to build wealth on UBI income. So we're talking about the Black road to Black wealth being zero by 2053, which is probably going to be sooner than that. Either we are going to have to really skill up, or we're going to be so far out of the marketplace that I don't know how we recover. And you're shaking your head with that. The other thing is that, you know, many of you know I'm a business plan writer by trade, and a couple of months ago I was introduced to a writing AI system, and I thought, well, that's silly, you know. But apparently it creatively writes blogs for people. You put in a few keywords and it writes these blogs for you. And all of a sudden I'm sitting down or sleeping at night, and I wake up and I'm thinking about this thing. And I said, there is going to be someone that creates a business plan AI. And I have to be prepared for that as well. What am I going to do? What is that going to look like 5 years from now when people say, oh, I want to use the AI business plan writer versus myself. So I think that all of us need to be very serious about really not buying into the fact that we cannot be replaced, and really looking at how we position ourselves by, I would say, 2025 for this train that is coming. Because the worst thing that can derail your wealth and your wealth building for your family is losing your income because you ignored artificial intelligence.
Well, and remember also, and this is kind of doom and gloom, but it's factual. You know, the whole point of automation and efficiencies is to reduce costs, right? So upskilling is only going to work for a few of us. I don't need all 40 of my staff to upskill because I'm not going to need all 40 of them, right? Mm-hmm. So that still means about 37 of them got to figure out another plan, right? Because I'm still going to take the best of the best that have upskilled, right? I don't need 40 consultants telling the program how to build a robot. I don't. So even in this upskilling scenario, there's still a bit of doom and gloom there. It's not the solution for everyone. And so I think what that means is not just upskilling in what you do, learning other things also, and try to figure out how to monetize those things, because you can't rely on just what you know today. You have to continue to learn and continue to grow. And that's kind of why we're doing some of the stuff that we're doing here at 10K. It's purposeful, right? We're not just throwing stuff at the wall. Cherie and I are very thoughtful about what we're trying to do. So the business buying masterminds, right? We had a great intro to a conversation today, and there may be a real estate mastermind, a stock investing mastermind. These are things that are going to help us build wealth in the event the man says, I don't need you anymore, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to be able to take your little box and walk out with a smile on your face because you've been planning for this day. It will not catch you off guard. That's the goal here at 10K, is that you're not shocked by it when it happens. You're expecting it and you're already ready for it, right? And if you're lucky, you're able to do it even before they do it, right? So before the first robot is built, you're able to go and say, you know what? I got a new plan. It's a new day. And thank you. It's been good. So think of that as well as we're having this conversation.
You know, I often think about the 10K Project did an interview with George Fraser. And one of the things that he says that often rings in my head is if you be the person who can repair the robots, right? Replace yourself is ultimately what he's saying. So we as a people, we as the 10K Project, we really need to start recruiting people for, you know, creating the NFT platforms that people can create their NFTs on. We should really think about how do we invent and code and whatever we have to do, the AI companies, and invest in those that are going to replace those 40 people or 37 people, right? So then, you know, okay, we can't hire all 37 of those people, but some of those people can come to work in our AI company, right? This is how we create jobs and we can work together to build Black wealth. So now Dr. Claude always talks about we do business with each other, but we sell to everybody. But we can't sell to people if we don't have the AI platform to offer them. We can't sell to people if we don't have the NFT platform to offer them. We can't sell to people if we're not properly positioned in the metaverse.